longhouse. There it is. Hemban. That's it. That's them. Meat, veg, and eggs.
Sigisio.
Good luck. Good luck.
Croeso I Hemban, croeso I Gogledd Cymru, which means welcome to Hemban, welcome to North Wales. One of the things that's really exciting about here is like a little bit like beyond the law, or like I feel like there's the whole of the UK, the other side of these mountains, and then this side of the mountains, there's just this little bit between us and the sea. And if you look back over time, like actually the Romans never made it down this peninsular land here. They got to here, they got to Carnarvon, they got to there, they got to these, but they never made it. Really, this side of the mountains, past Carnarvon, they just never made it into this last little bit. They just kind of went, you know what, like you can have that bit. Like but I feel like that's a pattern that's gone over so many times. The language is still here. This little corner here is like 85% first language Welsh or something like that. It's a really beautiful language actually though, and it's one of the oldest, like least changed languages over time actually. It's part of the understanding of the landscape really, you know.
Do you know any Welsh words that are not translatable or things that people say?
Well, there's hireth, which gets used quite a lot.
Yeah.
It's like a sense of belonging or a sense of home, but a sense of looking back to something that can never actually be though. So it's a really interesting word because it's like you're remembering something or feeling a call or a feel of home, but it can never actually exist. And it's a really beautiful kind of like this memory, this kind of calmness and feeling of the land around it.
Well, we need to talk about this. I mean, wow. What is this?
Well, this is our little longhouse. So I fell in love with those that are like Icelandic longhouses, you know? There's a kind of shape and form of building that they've got that I really wanted to build. And we've built a few like round structures, and they're all a bit randomly shaped. And I really wanted to make one that was just kind of square as well, you know, with curves. So I kind of crossed that traditional Icelandic longhouse with almost like a grain silo. You know, like actually, what do you have that's got to take a lot of weight, that's cut into a hillside or taken to a bank? So it's like grain silo meets Icelandic longhouse.
This is really buried. I mean, it's kind of underground.
Well, it is. I wanted it to feel completely underground, but I like this little bit of it just popping up. Found this old window in some little old boy's shed down in the village. And he said he'd bought it like 60 years ago to put into his thing he was going to build in his garden.
Wow, so tell me about the top of this. Tell me about the roof.
So we did it in like 2 days, and we just used old carpet.
Literal carpet?
Oh look, there's a bit of carpet here. Yeah, literally just someone's house carpet, look. So, and this is the best stuff. We bought all these posh membranes, and actually we put a layer of carpet below it and a layer of carpet over the top. And all the roots just mat into it, and it helps hold the moisture. And you just go to like the local recycling centre. Do you know what? You get some lovely rugs at the same time.
And then how much dirt did you throw on top? I mean, were you just big chunks of sod? Or
just sod.
Right,
the sod just comes out of the field. I mean, it's had quite a dry summer, so it's just kind of surviving. But this will all back up into life again. Oh, the fire's really going now. You can really see it coming through.
And then you have a skylight for the top here and another window.
And a little window and a cat, yeah.
This is Molly.
Hey, Molly. It's quite important, that kind of balance of light in it, isn't it? It's a funny balance because people are really used to light and windows, aren't they? And light's lovely, but I still think there's something about that little kind of like cozy, kind of smoky fireside story that needs that a little bit of that darkness as well. So it's just getting that balance right. Yeah, this is our massive pumpkin patch. Look at this. We just put them in. We had a bit of old manure and it's climbed right up the trees at the back and everything. Look. Yeah, I love it. This is our main veg patch in here.
We had the dream was to be sort of self-sufficient, and we always imagined buying 4 acres and a derelict house, but then we bought this place and it was bigger than we ever expected.
We had enough money to buy a little field, and then we found Hemban and we fell completely in love with this space, but it was way more than we could afford. So we lived in here with no electric for about 6 months. Well, about 6 months. It's just a static caravan, but we covered it. It's got a turf roof. We actually brought it in when we first came because we needed somewhere to live really quickly. But I was really set on actually when we came to the farm, because you meet all these people, don't you? And they buy a farm or they buy a piece of land and they want to do something with that piece of land, and they spend ages just working on the caravan or whatever. So, and I was like, Jenny, we've got one weekend. So we've got 48 hours to do up the caravan, and then after that 48 hours, we have to work on the house, no matter where we get to. So actually, I don't know if it's a good idea.
So you clad it a bit and put some...
It's got a turf roof, it's got wool above it. Well, to be honest, I'm quite a big fan of this multi-layer foil stuff. So these are like recycled bottles that get made into these little layers. Yeah. And then it's got like space blankets, you know, in a way.
Wow. So you have that underneath the cladding?
Yeah, and it's really effective. Because like our winters, they just get so windy nowadays. Yeah. And actually, if I've got a turf roof on, I can just sleep through any wind, can't I?
So you lived in here for 6 months and then you moved on?
And then we moved into the house. So when we came, the farm had a house. So it was a really important thing to Jenny to live somewhere where people had been born and died and lived their lives. You know, there's that like history of kind of hearth. But when we first came, we like really wanted just to buy like 4 walls and a couple of acres of land, you know? And then we found this place and like no one had lived here for 50, 60 years, so it had no roof. It's like it was forgotten. They're so beautiful, these buildings, aren't they? Because actually the grass just came right up to the door, you know? It's like all just lost in this little like overgrown world. It's just so nice to go to a place where people have lived for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so we kind of just a little part of that story. So we came in, we put a new roof on, we insulated the inside. We did quite a good job of insulating it whilst also not really having any money and just kind of making it all come together, didn't we? Yeah. So we've been here 10 years. I'd always wanted to be a farmer. We make some really sexy composts actually on the farm. we make a really nice hot compost. Well, this is more of a cold compost. This is just stuff shoved in, you know.
Okay. All right.
It's doing its thing and it's good, but So this is it's a no-dig market garden. It's all about really healthy soil. So actually what we've got is underneath this kind of layer of compost. So underneath here, there's a layer of soil somewhere. We've built a lot of soil now. Underneath here, there's a layer like the real soil. And in that real soil is all the kind of seeds. So it's full of all those weed seeds. And they're just desperate for those little moments. And they go, oh, look, I can breathe and there's light. And they get all these cues to suddenly grow up. So farming with permaculture and gardening with permaculture, we should never have exposed soil. So healthy soil is always covered up. So we've got a really nice compost that we make on farm that covers these beds up. And so by keeping the soil with its skin on, essentially, with that kind of layer over the top, it never gets a chance to kind of come up and out. So this is just a freshly made bed. And what I love about it is because these methods are growing, I mean, it's so productive. Actually, we've taken a piece of land it's an acre of land, right? And we take an acre of land, I can see the mountains, I can see the sea, and yet from this acre of land, I can feed 100 families, all their vegetables between June and December anyway. And so it's a bit of land that on almost any farm scale is kind of insignificant. And yet I can produce 100 families worth of veg off it. And it's all about these really, really kind of working with nature, looking at what nature does and then bringing that into the patterns in the garden. We've got these kind of wood chip paths. So all the beds are made, they're 75 centimetres wide. It's just like the perfect size for you can step over it easily. You can easily reach amongst it and kind of dig in and work it like that. With good sized beds. So we're not always like, you know, skimping along like this. And actually it just makes it, you know, I've got quite a big bum. So it's quite just a good space for me to be able to kind of be comfortable in the garden. And then with a wood chip, it's really easy to be able to pull any weeds out that are in it, but it's not dead space. So actually that wood chip, you've got all the mycorrhizae, you've got all the fungi, and that's always feeding those beds. So if you look at these crops, like their roots don't just go straight down to that bit. Actually, like these roots, they're going right way off. So all this bed as well is also part of the growing space, you know?
But you don't have to do any kind of tilling or any kind of, because you just leave the roots there, and what's going to make that decompose? The compost?
Well, no, just nature. So, you know, there's a whole soil food web down there, isn't there? So there's the protozoa, there's the bacteria, there's the nematodes, there's different worms, there's a whole big set of life. The wood chip paths kind of give us this kind of space for all the mycelium, for all the fungi to live, because that's what they live on, really. They like that wood chip. Yeah.
So, oh wow, okay, here we go, more. Yeah.
A few pigs here, yeah. So 3 years ago, this was all pig paddocks. So we had pigs on here and they destroyed it and they trampled it and they make like a really hard pan, don't they, to be honest. So we had pigs in here and then we came in and we brought it cow manure and compost and we spread it over all the beds, and then we just started growing on top of whatever was there. So we never disturbed it, we just started planting on top. It did take a year or two to really start performing. And then this year it's like it's really singing and it's working for us, which is nice as well. This year we've had quite a bit of surplus and I think we can do 100 families.
Is that commercially effective?
Yeah, no, it is really. It takes a lot of hours. It does take quite a lot of manpower. So I grew up like just desperate to become a farmer. Well, to do that, we had to take on a huge mortgage. And so at first I was like, no, we're just gonna grow vegetables and just sell vegetables and create this landscape. And then we're like, actually, we kind of need to pay this mortgage. And so we started the campsite. So we've been here 10 years. Well, no one had really touched the place for about 50 years before we came. Wow. So a lot of that is because you see we've got this kind of crazy kind of like fairyland around us, this little kind of, you know, this mad landscape. Well, that's because it was quarried. So it was actually quarried for sand and gravel, which was great for us because it meant we could afford it.
And what do you mean by fairylands?
When we first came, we used to have this rule, like we always go to the woods on Sundays. And we felt so ridiculously lucky to have found this bit of land. And it was almost like we kind of like, on Sundays, we used to like, almost like tiptoe, you know, like through the woods. Like just as you slow down, you kind of sink into the landscape a little bit more. You just take a deep breath of it, don't you? And you do kind of start to believe in these little twilth teg, they call them, in Cymraeg, in Welsh. The twilth teg, yeah, means fairies, yeah. Yeah, maybe it's not fairies, but it's kind of little mischievous folk that we don't really understand, you know? And then over here, we've got the roundhouse, which is the first one we built.
Wow, that's so magical looking.
But we really wanted to work with what resources we had, so as much of it as possible had to come from here. So like all the stone, all the timber, literally just came from like the little bit of woodland, almost the bit of woodland that we had to clear to make it. But then it's got a straw bale wall, and a lime plaster actually. We made it in 8 weeks. We were in a bit of a rush to make it. So,
wow.
So we went from like standing trees to it being finished really in about 8 weeks.
Dude, the grass is just growing right off the edge here. It's really growing, right?
Yeah. No, to be honest, I spent ages trying to work out how to make good fascia boards and then the grass just kind of did it for us, which is handy, isn't it?
How fast does it grow here? There's a lot of water, no? Probably?
Yeah, do you know what? Wales is such a great country for that because it just keeps on raining. We get a beautiful mix all the time of rain and sunshine. And it just makes everything so green and so alive, you know?
It's just grass pretty much, right? Or
No, it's pretty much grass. We did a few turf roofs early on in the thing, and I bought this like posh like turf roof seed mixture as used by His Royal Highness, whatever. And to be honest, it was rubbish. And then I've got another friend and he was like, well, just cut the grass out of the field. Like that grass wants to live there. So we just did that and it's worked really well.
It's much better than the seed mix.
Yeah. And we kept on thinking about trying to tame it somehow. Like maybe we should get like a little goat or a little hamster but I don't want anything that burrows, you know, like it can't go through the membrane. So, yeah.
Do you trim it?
No, we never have. Every now and then the cows come in. So we do have some cows that run through the farm sometimes and they have a little trim of this bit, you know. But no, he just kind of does it itself.
And you said the exterior is what?
It's a lime plaster actually. Okay. So it's lime over straw bales. I would love to cob it really, but I just couldn't do that in that time frame. So Wales used to be covered in roundhouses, little thatched kind of Celtic prehistory kind of roundhouses, but they all had all the timbers coming together to one central point. See, this is more a reinterpretation of that kind of proper Celtic roundhouse, you know, and the smoke just leaves through the thatch and
the roof structure is something.
So it's a reciprocal frame roof. All the timbers just came out of the woods around us. We managed to get all these timbers are all kind of similar size. And what's lovely is you build like a really strong frame to put those poles on. You put the first one on, the second one on. By the time you get to the end, you're like, this poor pole underneath taking all this weight. And then you take it away and they all just, it's reciprocal, you know, they're all looking after each other. And now I don't have a clue which was the first one.
That's so interesting because there really isn't. Nothing is the bottom,
No,
right?
but when you build it, there's one on the bottom and they all stack up on top and then you take it away and they drop together and that's it. They just, yeah. It's a solid building, but it is a really affordable, simple, easy thing.
I mean, it all had to come together in 8 weeks, so.
Yeah, so it had to be. And I would say building things on a time frame like that is just brilliant because we get a few people to help. Then you get all these perfectionists and they start going, oh, look, well, I could just, and you're like, wait a minute, we've got 8 weeks. So actually, all the way through the build, you can just keep going, 8-week roundhouse, 8-week roundhouse. And I almost think it's something people need for life. You just step back and take a little bit of ownership of it and see what you want out of it and realise that none of it's that complicated. One thing I did, which I don't know if I would do again, is I was really into this space of just trying to build it from the woods around us. And so actually, these 4 posts that make like the bed space, they just trees as they were standing. So we actually just cut it off here and just left them in the ground where they were. So actually part of the site selection was just kind of finding 4 trees were in that formation.
For the bed?
For the bed, just to make this little end dip, you know? But actually, I don't know if it's the best thing because they've stopped now. But we did have, for a good few years, they just keep on drinking water, don't they? I mean,
Do they really?
Well, they just draw water up, don't they? Like trees are pretty well designed and engineered to draw water out of the ground, don't they? So it's taken a few years for them to stop doing it.
Perspiring.
Yeah, a little bit. So if I did it again, I wouldn't just leave trees in the ground. But it's lovely now and it's stopped.
Yeah.
So I'm just mesmerized by this window here. Where do you find that?
Oh, do you know what? I bought this window, right? But it was really cheap. It was nothing. It was like £16. And I went to find another one and they were like £500. And I was like, oh, yeah. But there's something I love about that kind of peasant casting their seed in the field, you know, like, yeah.
So great.
But that's also the advantage of the straw bale walls because you can just cut holes in them wherever you want. It's like,
Yeah, I made the door out of it. So I made the frame and then I made a template off that and then I made a door to fit that shape. And as long as you get your hinges perfectly aligned, you can have whatever shape door you want, can't you?
Because it's just so curvy. I mean, it's not, you don't see doors that are...
It's what shape, you know, like what shape's a human, you know? Like, and I guess it kind of makes it slightly coffin shaped. But we got all this really beautiful ash wood. And so I was really keen that a little bit of the house came from that tree. And so we just planked this ourselves and yeah, and made the door out of it. So this is like a little single bed built into this little cupboard. It's just built into the frame of the house, you know?
So it is a structure because this is structural.
This is very structural. So the whole structure really depends on that kind of ring beam, you know? It's like a big person and a good strong belt, you know? You need that ring beam to hold it all in. And so the whole weight of the roof is pushing against this and this is just holding it together.
And then you have a couple sort of tree pieces.
Yeah, like why bother trying to make your own wind brace, you know, when a tree's already done it. So we do have water. When we first came, for the first year of the farm, we had no electric, no water, anything. We were really off grid. And I was like, no, wait a minute, people invented pipes. And so we had a solar system on the roof and it's got a battery system and it can still revert back to that if the electric goes down. It's still got like a 12-volt system. It's got, so this is gas. It's just got a little kind of propane gas hob. These are old scaffold boards, actually. It's just really quick, easy wood to work with. You know, and I quite like that thought that someone's been sat at the side of a big building with it and sat and had their lunch on it, you know, and stopped their angle grinder in it and, you know, that kind of thing. You know, they've got a history, haven't they? And I think running water is really good. It doesn't have hot running water. And it does have a hot shower, actually. You know, I mean, you can have as much Wim Hof as you like, but it's quite nice to have a nice hot shower underneath the trees.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just like look up and see the trees and outdoor. That outdoor hot shower, looking up at the stars. And again, it goes on that same, you know, like functional, like kind of beautiful, kind of functional, but simple at the same time.
Yeah, just a bit of corrugated.
Yeah,
metal.
a bit of Wrigley tin and larch. Yeah.
Simple. It works.
Yeah.
You have these forested patches that are beautiful. It's just, very area.
I think it is, you know, like you could almost, you know, you can look down these little paths, can't you? And you can kind of just think, did I just see something off there? I think actually though, just being in the woodland and waking up to dawn choruses, I think this is such an important thing, isn't it? Yeah, we really wanted to do know every bird's nest. So I'd spent my life flying all over the world making films actually, but really looking at loads of different ecosystems. And then there was this real want to build a nest for us. And we kind of went off looking for 4-6 acres and maybe a derelict house. I also wanted to really build my own little house. Like I just wanted to go and live in the woods and build a little hobbit house. Something small and built with my own hands. Well, it's just like den building, isn't it?
So then on this side, it opens out. Like it's not all under,
No, I wanted just to come straight in off the shape of the land, really. So this is its whole height.
Yeah.
So it only just bites into the hillside, that little bit.
Did that make it easier to build because you weren't digging so much? You weren't really digging under it?
I think so. We just dug that extra bit back into the hill. And what we did actually is we dug out like an extra metre or so on either side, so we had the workspace. We cleared it out, put all the soil to one side, and then we built the building, and then we just closed it back in again, which was a bit scary actually. Because it's like you design this thing, don't you? And you think you've got it right, and then all of a sudden you've got a digger driver, like, and inside it's going, and as the ground comes in, the ground wants to push in like this, but the roof has got the weight of the turf, so the roof wants to push out. So where these two meet, they kind of balance, and it just keeps that balance. Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of weight there.
There's a lot of weight there,
right?
And like I say, we filled it in, it did make a few groans and creaks and things moved a little bit. But we kind of expected that, and I was fine. And it was fine, more importantly. Yeah, it's got these little joints above where the rafters meet. There's like a little collar on that. And you could see when we first built it, and it didn't have the weight on, like it wanted to go one way and then the weight came the other way. And they've done a little dance as it kind of settled into place. But they've now not moved.
The doors they're not a standard square door.
No, I like either making things myself that are organic or just finding things that have been sat in people's sheds for a long time that people have forgotten what they were for or where they're from.
Mm-hmm. And these windows too are just not square, not rectangles. They're
Yeah, it's just a matter of breaking the square pattern, isn't it? Really? Yeah, come inside.
It smells good.
Yeah. So it's oak and linseed oil, actually, isn't it? Linseed oil smells lush.
So you wouldn't really know that you're underground because you have enough windows here.
There's enough light. Yeah, I think so. And then there's just that balance, so you don't feel like someone's just about to peer through either. You know, it's cozy enough to sit down and tell a story around the fire, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But it's light enough you can also read your book and you don't feel like you're in a little cave.
The longhouse, even what was it used for? Was it a home?
I think longhouses did everything, didn't they? I mean, people probably they always had that balance, didn't they? They would have lived anywhere between these little kind of like dug in little longhouse shapes that are made of turf. And it's a really economical way of building. That's one of the really nice things about building those old building styles. Is actually they're really economical, kind of easy ways of building because they had to be. So I think people used to use longhouses for everything. They would have been born and died in these spaces. They lived the whole family life in them, and they probably had a big like a kitchen one, and you would have had a bigger one for storytelling and feasting. And then you'd have had these little ones that you'd have had grandma and granddad, and you'd have had your nephew, and like the whole family would have been in one of these spaces, wouldn't they?
And the beds are built in?
Yeah, they're built in, they're solid. It's one of the things when I started looking into the Icelandic ones, I just really loved that you had all these families living in this space, but at the same time they had their own little space, like nowadays we've all got our own bedrooms, haven't we? But actually going back a little bit, this is probably about as private as your space got. And so, but I love these. They're almost like little kind of, if you're taking an overnight train, aren't they? Like little kind of cabins in the little space. Yeah. Right. Actually, like, you know, so much of the Northern Hemisphere, Scandinavia, here, there were Viking boats in this bay out here as well at some point. Yeah. And so one thing I love about this, actually, because I was thinking about this Viking part of it, is actually it's quite a lot like a ship turned upside down. Mm-hmm. You know, when you kind of look up and think about it, like you could be laid the wrong way up in a ship, couldn't you?
You were saying it's really economical. Why?
Just because I think that, you know, you've got that earth there for the insulation, you've got following those kind of traditional building patterns. They were quite easy on timber, they were quite easy on the kind of joinery methods because these resources were much harder to get hold of.
What are you doing for joinery here?
So it's really simple. Each rafter comes in and then it's just got a collar that ties in and then they've got oak pegs that come through. And what's really important with the pegs is they can't be in alignment. If they're in alignment, the whole plate can just come off. But as soon as they're skewed to each other, it's locked in place, isn't it? Straight away, that's kind of locks into position. You can see that in here. So that just stops them from spreading.
So if you see it here, like behind us, you're up to that bottom of the window with earth, right?
Well, ground out's about here, actually, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah.
This is the ground height around here.
And is that good insulation?
It's really good insulation. It gives it a really stable temperature, doesn't it, all year round, which is what's lovely about being in the earth and being in the ground. Just a little wood burner. I think it's really important I think this is one of the other things I realised is I love that fire, that kind of sitting down and that hearth. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of the space is to slow down and think about what matters.
The weather does get pretty wild round here in winter. We used to have a yurt here and like you're constantly just terrified of the yurt blowing away. These like a slightly underground turf roof structure is just brilliant. It's not going anywhere. Like the weather can be absolutely terrible and the turf roofs means it's very quiet in here, and even if it's absolutely tipping it down it stays very quiet, and it's just a nice safe space like that. It feels lovely.
Like rabbits have got it right, haven't you? All these animals, all these bears and rabbits and things, they all burrow down into that hillside, don't they, and vanish for winter. And you know, like we're supposed to be a permaculture farm, so we're supposed to copy nature. Yeah. So, you know, let's dig some holes and snuggle down. So this is the polytunnel. I guess you call them hoop houses. So, but we managed to get our hands on loads of second-hand, like water pipe. So we made it out of these. Well, it seemed like a really good idea. It was really strong and it was lovely. But actually, when it gets hot and the tomatoes weigh so much, so when you get that full crop of tomatoes and it gets hot, it all went a bit wiggly. So I had to put these little supports in. And we built these really nice big walls, you know? Like I really wanted this that kind of thermal mass of the walls to kind of keep it warm. It does the tomatoes and the cucumbers for the veg box, for the CSA scheme. In summer, and then in winter actually we fill it with chickens. So we've got 300 chickens and they come in for winter.
Oh, so it's a chicken house.
So it's a chicken house in winter and it's a tomato house in summer. So it's really good for the soil because it gets rid of any weeds and bugs or anything that are left over from the crops, and actually kind of vice versa, actually it works just as well. And the chickens love it because obviously like we're in Wales and it's a bit wet, isn't it? And it's a bit, you know, it's not always perfect. And chickens are like, well, they're like little Southeast Asian jungle birds, aren't they? So actually you bring them in the polytunnel and they love it and they go, oh, it's all kind of warm and dry, and this is what I was thinking of when I popped up my egg. Not some windy wet field. Yeah.
Right, and then they fertilizing the soil.
So they fertilize the soil a lot. I mean a lot. So actually we have to take some out. And that's what goes down to make these big compost heaps, actually, where you saw all the pumpkins and stuff before.
Look at these tomato plants, how
huge.
I don't know. I mean, they produce a lot of crop. So you could, in a way, you could have a tomato plant that you didn't prune as much and didn't like look after in that kind of commercial way, I guess. Okay. Really, okay. And so it might help like that.
So these are super productive.
They're really productive. Yeah.
Oh, well, it's chicken over here, enjoying herself. So they're allowed in.
No.
No.
This one's called Strawberry, and she just refuses to be a chicken. So all other 299 chickens go on rotation behind the cows and they go around the pastures, and this one just refuses to be a chicken. Oh shit, well, we'll kick her out in a bit, Jen. It'll be all right. Yeah, and then the barn, well, we just built the barn this year. We built this barn actually, there's not a single screw in the structure, it's all wood. Like the roof's screwed on with screws and the cladding. But the actual building itself is entirely made just with oak pegs and joinery. Pretty good. It's just lovely to have parties and weddings, and we've started to run a lot of courses and the kind of stuff in the way we farm. We also pack up the veg boxes in here. So it's like 6 o'clock Thursday morning and we get all the veg boxes all laid out and we started out kind of a bit more self-sufficient. So we started out just growing veg for us. And then, well, I really want to feed people. I kind of want to feed people a whole diet. So actually we do the market garden for the veg, but then actually we've got a beef herd, we've got a chicken flock, because we wanted to use those natural patterns. And so actually if you go, what's the most productive ecosystem on earth, right? It's savannah grassland. Well, no one had really touched the place for about 50 years before we came. Well, that's because it was quarried. So they came in and they took off whatever, top 10, 15, 20 metres and left this landscape behind. So these are a lot of the agroforestry range in a way. So when we bought the farm, like half the farm was woodland, half the farm was pasture. And what we've done is we've come in and we kind of broke that pasture up into 35 like little fields. Because if you think about nature, the most exciting bit is that it's that kind of woodland edge, isn't it? It's all about those edges. And if you think about, if you went back 4,000 years, the place to be would have been those forest glades. And that's where all the fruit and the currants and the nuts and everything came from those spaces. And so actually what I want to do is create the whole farm. So we've got loads of these forest glades. And it's all broken up with these tree rows. So these are all fruit and nuts and things like this that all grow in these fruit rows. And so in the end, we'll have an incredibly productive, diverse system. And it's really good for moving the cattle around. Every day we can just open a gate and the cows go into the next space. It's a really nice kind of container to move the chickens through. It gives that same really good kind of spacing and layout. So we've got 300 chickens and they get moved every other day actually. I'm too lazy to move it every day, but every other day they move onto a fresh patch and they kind of follow the cows.
So basically you have chickens that are making compost.
Yeah.
Is it cows or next to them? Is there sort of part of a cycle?
Well, the story goes that the cows come in first and the cows go in and they eat the weight of the grass. And then they poo, and then 2 days later the insects come in, then you've got all the insect larvae, and then the chickens come in and eat that. In truth, on a small farm, that is almost impossible to recreate. Because the chickens go at one speed, the cows go another. I live in Wales, which means I live on the side of a hill, so I can only take my chicken house, you know, my eggmobile on so many of the fields. But it works beautifully for us, even if it's not that perfect savannah system, you know.
It just took me a minute to realize that's a house, a chicken house, a coop.
Oh, yeah.
With a tractor attached, so you don't even attach the tractor.
No. Do you know what? I spent like 2 years, like every morning, reversing the tractor up to the thing. And I was like, well, wait a minute, all I'm doing is parking the tractor over there. So why don't I just leave it attached? Yeah, so now it just spends the summer attached to this and it works really, really well. Yeah. And this is our Mark IV chicken house that we've built. So we've built all sorts of weird, wonderful little shaped ones. But actually this one, it's basically got the maximum number of roost space that you can get in that space. And so we can get 300 chickens, quite happily can live in that space. And because of the shape of it, it's quite good in the wind as well. So if it's really windy, I can just turn it across the wind and it like pushes it into the ground rather than it blowing away.
Where, but they're in a beautiful place, you know. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I don't think they know it.
We don't know that.
We don't know, do we?
We've got no idea.
Right, to be honest, they see the view, don't they? They sit there and go, oh yeah. Yeah. No, I love the chickens and what they do for my soil, and they're great animals actually.
Is this productive? I mean, are you able to sort of really?
We can probably make £12,000, £13,000 off that kind of 300 chickens, which actually, if you look at conventional farming systems, 75% or something of conventional livestock farms in Wales run at a loss, actually, pre-subsidy. So to actually have all these little things that are all genuine, I mean, you know, 12, 13,000, is that anything? It's not a lot, but if you take that compared to most farms that actually run at a loss, whilst building grass like this and building soil, it's really powerful. Do you know, one thing, I made this stupid mistake when we first came. I was like, I really want to build soil. And then I went to visit someone who said they'd built a lot of soil. And I was like, well, you can't do it because your fence posts, they still end here. So surely your fence post, and it was really, and it took me ages to realise that you don't build soil like, because he's going to have built 25 centimetres. I was like, come on, like, look at your fence post, like they're the same length as mine. But actually you build it downwards. And if we took a spade and dug in here, that beautiful, rich, dark, organic earth is every year, it's just creeping a bit deeper and a bit deeper. And that is the best resource the farm can have. It's much better than money in the bank. Yeah, the savannah. So the savannah is that most productive system, and it built like 15 metres of topsoil. It used to support like, I don't know how many, but millions and millions and millions of buffalo. We could never imagine. So you've got these really productive systems, and we're just kind of mimicking that.
What do the cows do for you? Not milk, or?
We've got 2 house cows that we milk for us. It's such a different product to what you get in the shop. Like, it's just lovely having that milk. And then these guys really are for beef, really.
And do you sell that?
Yeah, no, we sell that. We sell that. Actually, do you know what? This summer's the first time we kept a cow back for us, because we always sell it. It sells so fast.
Really?
We just got rid of the sheep this year. So we used to have about 80 sheep as well. Because they kept on eating my fruit trees. To make the agroforestry work, we have to have really low-cost fencing systems, because we just can't really afford to fence it all out using, you know, big wire infrastructure and everything else. Whereas this, I can keep the cows out perfectly well. So we got rid of all the sheep, just while all these systems establish, you know.
Oh, you can really see how dense it is in here, though. It's savannah-like, I guess. No, or I don't.
Well, that's what we're trying to create. Like,
right?
Just imagine, because then you've got these nice little clearings of really productive grass, but then in the middle of breaking the whole system up, you've got these little incredibly productive little woodland edges.
But the idea with these tree lanes as well is that they're like linear forest gardens. So like we've got the whole full diversity, so that you've got your apple trees, but then you've got your understories of fruit. And then we're trying to put in all the support species as well, because apple trees don't want to grow just stuck in the middle of a field. They're designed to grow in a woodland. So we do a lot of wood chipping as well. So we wood chip all the tree lanes, which again builds this sort of fungal bacteria, which is what the trees like.
And actually, without losing any crop from the grass, we've got a whole extra crop and loads of other benefits from the agroforestry.
And is this, I mean, how many trees have you planted? Significant
lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, hundreds and hundreds, really. Well, thousands across, of all different types of tree, tens of thousands. The way the grass has behaved, because when we came, this grass was just like moss and catsia, and it was really just showed that we had really dry, really abused, really over extracted from soil. And now we've really got a good holistic grazing program on going over the cattle. Like, it's so productive now, and it's almost, we had a guy around the other day. We did a tour for like the Welsh government, like technical farm advisors, and he was going, well, this is like dairy quality grass. So actually, without putting in any inputs, without reseeding, without ploughing, without damaging the soil in any way, just with good rotational grazing, we've gone from like something that a real farmer would just wouldn't look at twice and completely walk past to this like dairy quality grass. Like it's really amazing. It's like everything we do on the farm, I think in a way what we've done is, and I never realised it, through permaculture you go, well, let's copy nature and let's bring that pattern onto our farm. But what you don't realise is we've also brought the patterns that humans are supposed to be living with as well. And actually, because like, what are humans supposed to do? Well, we're supposed to live in a little community. We've always got people on farm. You're supposed to grow your own food. Well, we do that. You're supposed to go around and make little shacks and little shelters. Well, we got really into that. Like, we're basically just doing what humans are supposed to do. And that makes them feel really lucky. It's like what we're designed for, isn't it? All right, you?
Yeah, good.
Good.
Yes. Just locked up.
Perfect.
I think we trying to suss the lay of the land. What's
Yeah.
where? Toilets,
Well,
that sort of thing.
basically, so in the middle of the campsite, if you're in the middle of the campsite and you went just forward, there's a little compost toilet off to your left down there.
Okay.
But there is also, if you went down this path,
Yeah.
and there's normal flush toilets and hot showers down at the farm down here.
Brilliant.
We'll make yourselves completely at home, like get lost,
Yeah.
wander around. Yeah.
Excellent.
Mummy.
Look cute.
He's so cute.